It had been snowing for 2 days straight in the tiny mountain town of Wren Hollow, the kind of snowfall that silenced even the most restless of creatures. Power lines had gone down the night before the grocery store was nearly out of bread, and the school had shut down until further notice. For most, the storm was a nightmare. For Ethan Granger, it was normal. As a single dad to an 8-year-old daughter, Maya, and a part-time handyman, Ethan had grown used to adapting. Their home, a small cabin tucked between tall pines and wrapped in layers of firewood, stood firm against the storm. But even he had to admit this one was different. The wind howled like it had a voice, a warning. Ethan stood at the kitchen window, mug in hand, watching snow pile up on the porch. Mia sat on the floor behind him, scribbling pictures of unicorns in a sketchbook that had seen better days. "Daddy, can unicorns survive blizzards?" she asked. He smiled faintly. "Only if they have warm boots and someone who loves them." Just as he turned to sit down, a noise cut through the wind, faint but unmistakable. A car horn. And then, nothing. Ethan paused. No one should be out here. His nearest neighbor lived 2 miles away, and tourists knew better than to take Route 9 during a storm like this. He grabbed his coat, boots, and a flashlight. "Mia, stay here. I'll be right back." Outside, the snow came at him sideways. Visibility was almost zero, but he followed the sound. Within minutes, he found the car half buried near a ditch, hazard lights blinking weakly. The windshield was frosted over, and through the driver's side window, he saw movement. He yanked the door open, and there she was. A woman unconscious, wrapped in a designer coat that was soaked through. Her lips were blue. Without thinking, he pulled her into his arms and carried her toward the cabin. He had no idea who she was, and no clue that by saving her life, he was about to change his own forever. Ethan kicked the cabin door open with his boot and carried the unconscious woman into the warmth. Mia gasped when she saw her. "Daddy, is she dead?" "No, sweetheart," he said quickly, laying the woman down on the couch near the fire. "But she's close. Grab that extra blanket from your bed fast." Mia bolted down the hallway. Ethan removed the woman's soaked coat and boots, his fingers working fast despite the cold. Her skin was icy to the touch. He rubbed her hands between his own, trying to bring warmth back into her limbs. "Come on," he muttered. "Don't give up now." Mia returned, dragging 2 blankets. Ethan wrapped them tightly around the woman, then added another log to the fire. For a few long minutes, there was only the sound of the crackling wood and the wind screaming outside, and then a cough. Her body jerked slightly. She coughed again, then groaned softly and opened her eyes, startled, confused, and unfocused. "Where?" Her voice was faint, hoarse. "Where am I?" "You're safe," Ethan said, kneeling beside her. "You were in a car crash. I found you by the old turn near Miller's Creek." Her brows furrowed. She tried to sit up, but he gently pushed her back. "Don't move too fast. You were hypothermic." She looked around, blinking at the cabin's modest furnishings. Her eyes stopped on Mia, who stood nearby holding a cup of warm cocoa with both hands. "My daughter," Ethan said. "Mia." Mia gave a small wave. "Hi." The woman blinked again. I was going to Ridgeview. There was supposed to be a conference." "I think you're not going anywhere tonight," Ethan said. "You're lucky I heard your horn." There was silence, then her eyes filled with something he didn't expect: shock. Not at her situation. At him. "You're the man from the gas station," she whispered. Ethan stared. "What?" "2 days ago. You helped a stranger fix his tire in the snow, remember?" He vaguely did. A guy with a flat, no gloves, struggling in the cold. Ethan had spent 10 minutes helping and hadn't thought much of it. She gave a faint, breathless laugh. "That was my driver." He brought her warm tea and gave her his only spare set of dry clothes, an old thermal shirt and sweatpants. When she re-emerged from the bathroom, hair damp, face pale but clearer, she looked less like a victim of the storm and more like someone who didn't belong in a cabin at all. Her posture was regal. Her movements were precise. Even the way she examined the couch before sitting spoke volumes. "I didn't get your name," Ethan said, handing her a bowl of chicken broth. She hesitated. Then Valeria Sinclair. It sounded familiar. Too familiar. Mia's voice piped up from the corner. You look like that lady on the magazine. Daddy always throws away. Ethan froze. Valeria's lips twitched into a tired smile. That's probably me. Because Valeria Sinclair wasn't just anyone. She was the CEO of Sinclair Holdings. The media called her the Ice Queen of Manhattan, brilliant, ruthless, and completely unreachable. She had no reason to be in Wren Hollow. But tomorrow, Ethan would find out she had every reason to be exactly where she was. The wind eased slightly overnight, and by morning, Wren Hollow looked like a painting, snow-covered pines, icicles hanging like crystal daggers, and rooftops buried under white silence. Ethan rose early. He stoked the fire and checked the generator, making sure there was still enough fuel to keep them warm. Then he brewed coffee, the strong, no-nonsense kind, and stared out the window, trying to make sense of last night. Valeria Sinclair. He'd rescued Valeria Sinclair. She was on the cover of Fortune Had Spoken at the World Economic Summit and supposedly controlled more commercial property in Manhattan than any other living person. And right now, she was sleeping on his couch, bundled up in his old high school sweatshirt. It felt surreal. Valeria stirred just after dawn. She walked into the kitchen barefoot. Her hair slightly tousled and looked far more human than the version of her he'd seen in headlines. She accepted the mug of coffee he handed her with a soft thank you. How are you feeling? Ethan asked. She sipped. Warm. Alive. Embarrassed. Why embarrassed? Because I'm not used to being rescued, she said dryly, or needing help at all. Ethan leaned against the counter. You picked the worst storm of the decade to visit Wren Hollow. I didn't mean to, she admitted. I was supposed to fly to Chicago. Weather rerouted us. My driver thought he could beat the worst of the storm before nightfall. He was wrong. He nodded slowly. You're lucky you crashed near my land. Anyone else, well, no one else lives out here. She looked at him for a long moment. So you're a mechanic used to be. Now I'm a handyman. Single dad. Valeria glanced over to where Mia was still asleep, curled on the couch with her stuffed unicorn. Her expression softened. She's beautiful. She's my world. Valeria's eyes lingered. You're doing it alone. Ethan nodded. Mia's mom died when she was 2. Car accident. I left the city after that. Bought this place with what little I had left. We make do. For a moment, her guard slipped. Valeria looked genuinely moved. I'm sorry, she said quietly. Don't be, Ethan replied. We've got enough. That's more than a lot of folks can say. They ate oatmeal and eggs in companionable silence. Outside, the wind started to pick up again, and then they heard it. Helicopters. Mia's head shot up. Daddy, are we being invaded? Ethan stood quickly and looked out the front window. Black SUVs were pulling up to the edge of the property. 4 of them. Behind them, a sleek black helicopter lowered onto a cleared patch of snow, its blades kicking up a blizzard of white. Men in dark coats jumped out before the rotor stopped spinning. Valeria stood, calmly set her coffee down, and walked to the door. The late man approached, bowed his head slightly, and said in a deep voice, Miss Sinclair, we've been searching for you. Your jet is waiting. And the mayor called. He says the city is still running because you own half of it. Ethan's jaw dropped. So did Mia's Coco. The door swung open and snow swirled in. The man who had spoken, tall, clean-shaven, with the posture of military training, stood waiting in the snow like it didn't bother him. Valeria didn't move. She stared past him toward the helicopter, toward the caravan of SUVs, then slowly turned back to Ethan and Mia. I need a minute, she said. The man hesitated. Ma'am, Mr. Klein is already en route to Geneva. There are decisions only you can make. I said, she repeated more firmly, I need a minute. He backed off immediately, nodding. She closed the door gently and leaned against it. For a second, she didn't say anything. She just stared at the floor. Ethan cleared his throat. Well, that explains the suit. She gave a half laugh, half sigh, and moved back into the living room. The weight of the night and the reveal clearly hadn't sat easily on her shoulders. "I'm sorry," she said. "I should have told you who I was. I don't care if you're the Queen of England," Ethan replied. "You were freezing to death in a cave and needed help. That's all that mattered to me." Valeria's lips quirked into the first genuine smile he'd seen from her. Mia piped up, curiosity overwhelming her awe. "Are you really rich?" Valeria knelt beside her. "Yes, like rich enough to own an ice cream factory?" "Probably two." Mia gasped. "Can I visit them?" Valeria laughed softly. "I'll have my people send you a lifetime supply of fudge swirl. Deal." Ethan watched them conflicted. He had no claim to Valeria, no reason to be anything but a footnote in her very strange detour. Yet part of him hated the thought of her stepping back into that other world, the one with bodyguards, corporate crises, and skyscrapers, like none of this had happened. "Will they take you back to the city now?" he asked. Valeria stood again, her smile fading. "Yes, there's a summit tomorrow. I'm supposed to speak, and my phone's probably overloaded with 100 crises." She paused. "But I've never felt further from it all than I do now." "Funny," Ethan murmured. "You're the most important woman I've ever had on my couch, and yet here you are avoiding going back." Valeria glanced toward the fire, then down at her own hands. "That couch was warmer than any penthouse I've ever lived in." Outside, her guards waited. The storm had eased, but now a different kind of whirlwind, stirred in the air of decisions, emotions, goodbyes. "I should go," she said. "Of course," Ethan said. "Back to owning half the city." She smiled wryly, stepped forward and surprised him, wrapped her arms around him. "Thank you," she whispered into his chest. He returned the embrace, holding her close as long as he dared. Mia waved furiously as the helicopter lifted off. Valeria inside pressed her palm to the window as the little girl grew smaller below. Back in the cabin, Ethan watched until the chopper disappeared behind the trees. He didn't know it then, but that would not be the last time he saw Valeria Sinclair. Not by a long shot. Days passed, and with them, the snow slowly began to melt. Life in Wren Hollow returned to its quiet rhythm, slow, predictable, and modest. Ethan patched the old wood pile, cleaned the generator, and fixed a broken faucet in town. Mia returned to drawing unicorns, though now they all wore sunglasses and flew helicopters. But something had shifted. The cabin felt emptier. Every corner seemed to echo with a memory: Valeria sipping coffee by the window, curled in his flannel blanket, her smile as she watched Mia talk about candy and cartoons, the way she'd hesitated before stepping back into her world. Ethan had no illusions. She belonged to a life far removed from his private jets, high-rise offices, and billion-dollar decisions. Still, something about her had been real, raw, and startlingly human. And it stayed with him. Mia didn't forget either. "Do you think she's okay?" she asked one morning over pancakes. "She's probably very busy," Ethan replied, trying not to sound wistful. "But she said she'd send me fudge swirl." He smiled. "Maybe she will." He didn't expect her to. But 3 days later, a delivery truck pulled up to their cabin. And out came not just a box, but 12 cartons of premium fudge, swirl ice cream, with a note handwritten in elegant cursive: "To Mia, keep being magical. Unicorns like you deserve the best." Below it scribbled in a more rushed hand: "P.S. Ethan, if you ever find yourself in the city, call me." Attached was a card: "Valeria Sinclair, CEO, Sinclair Holdings Private Line." Ethan stared at the card for a long time, then slipped it into his wallet next to a worn photo of Mia as a baby. 3 weeks later, the city buzzed beneath a gray sky. Valeria Sinclair stood in her corner office, 37 floors above street level, staring out at the skyline like it was a chessboard she had long since mastered. Her assistants whispered outside the frosted glass doors. Phones rang, stock tickers scrolled silently across digital walls. But Valeria heard none of it. Her mind was back in a cabin, back with the firelight, back with Ethan's quiet eyes and Mia's innocent laughter. Ma'am, her chief of staff, Gregory said carefully, your next meeting is in 10 minutes. The acquisition team from Tokyo is waiting. Valeria blinked. Right. Push it 20 and get me a coffee. Real coffee. Not that powdered boardroom nonsense. Gregory hesitated. We have a chef flown in from Italy. I don't want his truffle-infused oat milk foam, she snapped. I want black coffee, like a human being. He vanished without another word. Valeria turned back to the window. For years, she had built this empire brick by brick, outmaneuvering rivals, absorbing smaller firms, turning abandoned districts into luxury. Her name was synonymous with control. And yet, for the first time in a decade, she didn't feel powerful. She felt homesick. And she wasn't sure anymore if this high-rise glass cage was home at all. That night, she returned to her penthouse. She passed marble floors, a private elevator, and a grand piano no one played. The silence was deafening. She made herself dinner well-selected, something from the smart fridge, and pressed start. Her robotic kitchen assistant hummed to life, but the food had no flavor. Nothing did. She walked to her closet past racks of designer coats and pulled open a drawer she hadn't touched in days. Inside Ethan's flannel shirt, clean folded. She held it to her chest, breathed it in. Smoke pine and something else she couldn't name. Emotion surged in her throat. She'd never been safer than in that broken-down cabin. She walked to the window. Below, the city lights sprawled like a galaxy. And for the first time in her adult life, she picked up her phone, bypassed all assistants, and dialed a number manually. It rang once, twice, and then Ethan Granger. His voice was rough, deep, warm. Valeria's breath caught. Hi, she said, her voice softer than she expected. It's me. Silence. And then I was wondering when you'd call. Valeria leaned against the cold glass of her penthouse window, the phone warm against her ear. Outside, the city buzzed, taxis, honking lights, pulsing, the sounds of ambition and urgency echoing through the streets. But on the line, there was only Ethan. And in his voice, none of the rush, none of the noise, just calm. I didn't know if you'd pick up, she admitted. Ethan chuckled. I didn't know if you'd ever call. A pause. Things get quiet out here, he added. Valeria closed her eyes. They never do here. She heard him shift, maybe leaning against his porch rail or placing his mug on the counter. She imagined snow still lingering outside his cabin, a crackling fire, Mia tucked into bed with her unicorn dreams. I got your note, he said, and the ice cream Mia's rationing it like gold bars. They both laughed softly. The silence that followed wasn't uncomfortable. It was full, like space waiting to be filled with meaning. I haven't stopped thinking about that night, Valeria admitted. And not just because you saved my life. Ethan said nothing at first. Then I haven't stopped thinking about you either. The next weekend, Valeria left the city. No entourage, no motorcade. Just her and a driver who was sworn to secrecy, in a simple duffel bag that held nothing worth more than 50. Wren Hollow was still thawing. The roads were slick, but passable. As they neared Ethan's cabin, she rolled down the window and breathed the sharp, pine-tinged air. It smelled like honesty. Ethan was waiting on the porch in a thick flannel jacket, arms crossed, a knowing smile on his face. Mia burst out the door before the car stopped and ran to her. You came back. Valeria dropped to one knee and hugged her tightly. Of course I did. Ethan stepped forward, hands buried in his pockets. She looked up at him, a rare uncertainty in her eyes. Is it okay I'm here? He smiled. It wouldn't feel right if you weren't. That night they sat around the fire again. No boardrooms, no headlines, just a single dad, his daughter, and the woman who, despite owning half the city, realized this was the first place she'd ever felt like she belonged. As Mia drifted to sleep on the couch, unicorn sketchbook in hand, Valeria looked over at Ethan. I could stay a little longer, she whispered. Ethan's gaze never left hers. You can stay as long as you want. The fire popped and crackled, casting flickers of gold across the cabin's wooden walls. Outside, the snow had settled into a soft, muffled silence, like the forest was holding its breath for something sacred. Valeria sat curled on the floor with a blanket around her shoulders, her knees tucked up and her eyes soft in the firelight. Across from her, Ethan watched her not with curiosity, but with the quiet awe of someone who knew the moment was rare and real. I forgot what stillness felt like, she murmured. Ethan stirred his tea. City never gives you that. She shook her head. The city doesn't give anything. You have to take it. And even then it demands something back. He leaned forward, his elbows on his knees. So what's it demanding from you now? Valeria hesitated. My soul most days, she said with a dry smile. But lately it wants my time, my attention, my name on 10 more contracts, my face on another magazine. I don't know who I'm performing for anymore. I don't know who Valeria Sinclair is outside that tower. Ethan tilted his head. You could always try being just Valeria. She looked at him, something flickering behind her eyes, something soft and terrified and hopeful. I don't know how. He gave her a small, crooked smile. Then stay a little longer. We'll figure it out. The next morning she cooked breakfast. Badly. Mia tried to help, but the pancakes turned out lumpy, the eggs a little burned. Ethan took one bite and coughed, but smiled through it. Five-star disaster, he joked. Valeria stuck her tongue out at him. You try flipping a pancake with one eye open and a 6-year-old on your foot. I'm 8, Mia corrected proudly, and Valeria bowed her head. My apologies, miss. They all laughed. Later, the three of them hiked through the thinning snow in the woods behind the cabin. Ethan showed her a frozen creek where Mia liked to build twig castles. They found fox tracks in the hollow of a tree where owls sometimes nested. This feels like another life, Valeria whispered as they walked side by side, her gloved hand brushing his. It can be, Ethan said simply. She turned to him, snowflakes clinging to her lashes. But what about your life? You're rooted here. You have Mia. You can't just pick up and move. I don't want to move, he said, but I'd make space for the right person. She held his gaze, and in that cold, quiet forest, her fingers slipped into his. That evening, as Mia slept and the firelight danced again, Valeria sat on the couch while Ethan tuned an old guitar. I didn't know you played, she said. He strummed a few soft chords. Just enough to embarrass myself, he played a melody, slow, gentle worn at the edges. Sing, she whispered. He shook his head. No chance, she scooted closer. Come on, you saved my life. The least you can do is destroy my eardrums. Ethan sighed dramatically, then sang. His voice was deep, imperfect, but raw. Real, like warm bread and old secrets. When the song ended, the room felt suspended in something unspoken. Valeria leaned into him, head on his shoulder. And for the first time in years, she felt safe. Not because she had guards or gates, but because someone saw her and stayed anyway. 3 peaceful days passed, no board meetings, no bodyguards, no billion-dollar phone calls. Valeria baked her first apple pie, burnt edges but edible. Mia made a crown out of pine cones and declared herself queen of the cabin. Ethan chopped wood, fixed a loose hinge on the door, and quietly watched Valeria as if she were a comet that had fallen into his life and might vanish just as quickly. But on the 4th day, the world came knocking. Literally. A sleek black sedan pulled up just past the tree line. A tall man in a sharply cut gray suit stepped out, careful not to get mud on his polished shoes. He carried a phone in one hand and urgency in the other. Valeria spotted him from the kitchen window and tensed instantly. That's Marcus Klein. Friend of yours, Ethan asked. She sighed. He's the COO of Sinclair Holdings. My right hand, my leash. Marcus didn't wait to be invited in. He rapped on the door, then opened it. Valeria, he said, brushing snow off his shoulders, we need to talk. Nice to see you too, she said dryly. His eyes scanned the room, rustic walls, cozy fire, the aroma of something slightly overcooked. Then he spotted Ethan. Marcus's expression shifted, civil but wary. Who's he? He asked bluntly. Ethan extended a hand. Ethan Granger. Marcus didn't take it. Charming. Valeria stepped between them. Marcus, I'm fine. You didn't need to come all this way. You vanished for 4 days, he said. The press is circling. The board is panicking. We've delayed 2 major deals and your absence is costing us. She folded her arms. So Marcus blinked. So I didn't ask for the company to revolve around me. You all made it that way because you made yourself the sun, Valeria. She stepped closer, her voice cool. And maybe now I want to be the moon. Marcus looked genuinely lost for a moment. Then in a lower tone, you're serious. I'm tired, Marcus. Of the boardroom, of being the perfect storm in a power suit. I came here to breathe. He stared at her. Then his eyes flicked toward Ethan and Mia. And you found a reason to stay. That night after Marcus left with a tight-lipped nod and a folder full of unsigned contracts, Ethan found Valeria sitting on the porch swing, wrapped in a wool blanket, watching the stars. You okay, he asked. She nodded slowly. I should have felt guilty, but I didn't. I've spent my life building an empire just to feel trapped at the top of it. Ethan sat beside her. And now, she looked at him. I feel like I'm finally building something real. They sat in silence for a long while, their shoulders touching. You know, Ethan said if you're ever looking to invest in something that won't collapse with the next recession. She raised an eyebrow, like what Mia's unicorn art empire could be worth millions. Valeria laughed, really laughed, head back, eyes bright. And for a moment, the storm, the boardroom, the power, all of it, felt 1,000 miles away. A week later, the snow was almost gone. Spring in Wren Hollow came quietly, just a whisper of green on the trees, the first bird song in the air, and the gentle gurgle of thawing creeks. The world was waking up. So was something inside Valeria. She stood barefoot in the garden Ethan had once abandoned. The soil was still hard, but she knelt down and pressed her palm into the earth. You ever plan anything? Ethan asked behind her. She looked over her shoulder. Only people's careers, he chuckled. You don't get dirt under your nails in a corner office. No, she said, smiling softly. But maybe that was the problem. Ethan offered her a small pouch of wildflower seeds. Try these, they don't ask for much. Just time, patience, and a little light. She looked at the pouch, then at him, then down at her hands. I don't know how to slow down, she admitted. Not really, you just did. Later that afternoon, they picnicked by the creek, Valeria, Ethan, and Mia sitting on a checkered blanket with peanut butter sandwiches and lukewarm cocoa. Mia was showing off her latest drawing, Valeria as a superhero in a blazer saving unicorns from a volcano. Ethan leaned over. I've never seen anyone survive that much lava in heels. Valeria grinned. I'm a woman of many talents. When Mia wandered off to explore the rocks nearby, Ethan turned to Valeria. So what happens next, he asked. She didn't answer right away. Her eyes followed Mia, small, strong, wild-haired, chasing butterflies with total abandon. Then she whispered, I think I want a different life. You don't have to decide today. I think I already did. He looked at her carefully. You sure? Because the world you left won't wait forever. She turned toward him, her expression clear, unwavering. Let it. That night, under the soft light of lanterns on the porch, Valeria pulled out her phone and drafted an email. To the board, I'll be stepping down as acting CEO effective immediately. This decision is not a retreat, but a return to values, to stillness, to life. I've spent years building towers. Now I want to build roots. Valeria Sinclair. She hovered for a moment, then hit send. Inside, Ethan was tucking Mia into bed. Daddy, she whispered. Yeah, sweetheart, is Valeria gonna stay forever? He smiled. I don't know, but sometimes the people who almost leave are the ones who end up staying the longest. Mia nodded, satisfied. Can she be my mom? Ethan froze for a beat, then leaned down and kissed her forehead. We'll see, he said softly, one day at a time. Morning light spilled through the cabin windows, warm and golden. Birds chirped on the pine branches, and the breeze carried the scent of earth waking up. Valeria stood in the doorway, a mug in her hand, and her hair loose around her shoulders. She wasn't wearing heels or a power suit, just Ethan's oversized flannel and socks that didn't match. She looked like she belonged there. Ethan came up behind her, his hands brushing gently against her waist. You slept in, he murmured. I resigned from a $12 billion company. I think I earned it. He chuckled and kissed the top of her head. You still get to make coffee, though. Fine, she said, but only because you chop wood better than me. They moved through the kitchen like they'd always done it. Easy, wordless. He handed her a spoon before she even asked for one. She passed him the honey without looking. Something in the air had shifted. It was no longer a temporary stay. It was the beginning of something real. Over the next week, Valeria did things she never imagined. She helped build a new chicken coop. Poorly. She learned to make blueberry jam. Badly. She planted carrots and wildflowers in the garden and accidentally pulled a worm out of the soil and screamed. Ethan laughed harder than he had in years, but she didn't stop trying because here mistakes were allowed. No boardroom disasters, no headlines, just second chances freely given. One evening, as the three of them roasted marshmallows outside, Maya looked up at the stars. Do you think we'll always be like this? She asked. Valeria looked at Ethan. He looked back. I hope so, she said. Mia smiled. Then I'm going to make a wish. She closed her eyes tight and whispered something into the dark sky. Valeria leaned closer. What did you wish for? Mia grinned. Can't tell, or it won't come true. Valeria and Ethan laughed. Later that night, when Mia had gone to bed, Valeria and Ethan sat on the porch swing under a thick blanket, her head against his chest. I keep thinking about everything I walked away from, she said. Do you miss it? He asked quietly. She paused. Some parts, yes. But I think I was lonely at the top, Ethan. I had everything except someone to come home to, someone to laugh with, someone to believe in me when I wasn't impressive. He took her hand. You've always been impressive, but I like this version of you best. The flannel-wearing, chicken-scared, jam-burning one. The real one, he whispered. They kissed, soft. Sure, no more questions left. And for the first time in years, Valeria Sinclair, powerhouse tycoon headline queen, felt truly and completely at peace. 6 months later, autumn had painted Wren Hollow in gold. The forest blazed with crimson leaves, and the cabin was now surrounded by the soft rustle of change. But this time, change didn't mean endings. It meant growth. Inside, the smell of cinnamon filled the air. Valeria, hair tied in a loose braid, sleeves rolled up, was pulling an actual, not burnt pie from the oven. Mia sat at the table decorating paper crowns for her harvest festival, which she had invented and declared a national holiday of the cabin. Ethan came in from outside, cheeks flushed from the crisp air, a basket of apples in one hand. Two things, he said, smiling. One, that pie smells amazing. And two, your garden's still alive. You might be a witch. Valeria grinned, a very stylish witch. He kissed her cheek as he passed. Later that evening, neighbors, yes, real neighbors, gathered around the bonfire Ethan had built behind the cabin. The old Hamilton couple brought cider. A teenager from town strummed a guitar. Mia ran around with other kids, her laughter rising with the smoke. Valeria stood off to the side, a cup of cider in hand, watching it all. This was hers now. Not the company, not the skyline, not the empire. This, the laughter, the stillness, the soil under her nails, the man beside her. The little girl who called her Val now, as if it were the most natural thing in the world. Ethan came to her side and slipped his arm around her waist. You good, he asked. She nodded. I was always running before. Now I finally understand what it means to stay. He looked at her. You ever think of going back, only for fudge swirl and quarterly ice cream reports? He laughed. Seriously, though, she added, I thought I'd lose myself if I stepped away. But I think I finally found myself. Weeks later, they built a second bedroom under the cabin. Months after that, Mia started calling her mom without being asked. And on a quiet winter evening, Ethan got down on one knee beside the fireplace with a ring fashioned from local river gold, polished by hand, simple and honest, and asked her to marry him. She said yes before he could even finish the sentence. No headlines ever captured it. No magazines ever ran the story. But in a cabin deep in the woods of Wren Hollow, far from glass, towers, and boardrooms, the woman who once owned half the city found everything she'd ever truly wanted. A child's laughter, a man's steady hand, and a life built not on power, but on love.